Living in silence and solitude is one of the most mysterious practices of monastic life. Why do some choose to cut themselves off from the outside world? And what can be attained through such discipline? To get a better understanding, we visited an order of nuns who have managed to live an enclosed life in an unlikely setting. Although located in one of the most populated places in the world, the Order of Discalced Carmelite Nuns of Brooklyn, New York, have virtually cut themselves off from society.
I would describe their lifestyle as one that is quiet, one that is hospitable, one that is dealing with important issues of the human psyche, the human soul, and the human person.
Leaving the monastery only when absolutely necessary, the sisters otherwise live an enclosed life, away from the distractions of a busy world that surrounds them. Sometimes referred to as barefoot Carmelites, the order is often characterized by their simple footwear, which is indicative of their modest lifestyle.
I think their lifestyle is very structured. So there's time for prayer, there's time for work, there's time for recreation. They're a very structured society. And that structure creates the rhythm of the day. And the rhythm of the day is done, always in the idea of the monastery, always in the presence of God, always being aware of that.
A typical day for a Discalced Carmelite involves many hours of prayer coupled with work. And although there is no vow of silence, the sisters strive to nurture a culture of silence, speaking only when necessary. Socializing and frequent visits from outsiders are discouraged. It is often viewed as a distraction. This reclusive existence has one main purpose: to support a contemplated lifestyle focused on prayer, a lifestyle they believe facilitates a stronger bond with God.
The tradition of our order traces its very beginning to the hermits who lived on Mount Carmel, disciples of the prophets Elijah and Eliseus, dedicated to contemplation in solitude and burning with zeal for the glory of God. It was Saint Teresa, our Holy Mother, who imparted to the Order of Carmel an apostolic and ecclesial spirit, desiring to come to the aid of the Church in her day as it was being rocked to its very foundation by the Lutheran heresy. We're here not for our own comfort, but to pray and give of ourselves for souls, and there are so many in need. The walls are not an escape from the world, but enable us to enter more readily into a loving relationship with God and experiencing this love. We are moved to a greater love for our brothers and sisters, and this love is turned into a sacrificial offering of oneself for souls. The purpose of the vow of poverty and the detachments in our life, or any religious life, is to create an emptiness for God to fill. For only the vessel that is empty may be filled. And so we want to get rid of our self-love, our disordered love for creatures, so that we may be filled with the real thing, love Him. This process of complete detachment from things and fostering a great attachment to God is the goal of a lifetime. Of poverty help toward this end. Jesus lived in imitation of the humble, hidden life of Our Lady at Nazareth. So we engage in humble tasks, much as she might have done. The time allotted for manual labor each day is mainly in making altar breads, which has become the work of this Carmel and helps us to support the monastery. We live in a world which is so full of noise and commotion. Living in silence opens one up to the realization that God is present within us and will communicate Himself to the soul who will listen.
To a certain degree, the monastery kind of shines light on I think, on the whole, on every vocation in the church, in the sense that we're called to, all of us are called to pray, have times of silence, and have a rhythm of the day. For me, the emphasis is prayer leading to apostolic work. and apostolic work leading to prayer. For them, their day is to pray for the church who is involved in apostolic work. By apostolic work, I mean being with people.
Does a life of silence and solitude really lead to a closer connection with God? Perhaps only those who practice can ever truly know. But some monastic orders take a different path, dedicating their lives to charity within the surrounding community while being true to the vow of poverty. When we return, those who serve God by serving others. Welcome back. The vow of poverty is not to be interpreted as a promise to live in poverty. Rather, it is an understanding that everything must be shared in common. For those who live in a monastery, this means that no one can claim ownership over anything and that everyone must live according to their needs. But for one monastic order, this means not only tending to the needs within their walls, but outside as well. After branching off from the Capuchin order in 1987, the Franciscan Friars of the Renewal set out with a specific purpose in mind.
Our desire was to live our Franciscan life, but there was a person who was much like St. Francis of Assisi. She was not a Franciscan, but Mother Teresa of Calcutta, who we might say is the St. Francis of Assisi of this century. And so she was somewhat of an inspiration for us to begin again. And so in 1987, we went to our superiors and told our superiors of our community that we wanted to begin a renewal within our Capuchin family. What is at the heart of our Franciscan call is to be with the poor, to serve the poor, and to live with the poor. And so, in fact, that's how we know what neighborhood to go in, and that's what neighborhoods that we shouldn't go in. Quite often bishops ask us to move into their diocese, but we have to tell them that if we go into the diocese, we cannot run a parish because we're not parish priests or a community that does parochial work. And number two, we have to live in an area noted for poverty.
By living among those in need, the friars are able to witness the problems firsthand.
Yes, there's crime, and yes, there's drugs, and yes, there's prostitution and the like in some of our neighborhoods. But you know what? There's plenty of people there who are very law-abiding and godly and very, very good people. They don't make the paper, and people don't necessarily think about them, but this is their neighborhood. And we get to know our neighbors, they get to know us, and we find that to be something very enriching.
And thus, able to serve the community more effectively. If a neighborhood has a turnaround, the friars will move to another struggling area so that they can continue to dedicate themselves to a life of charity.
Friars take 3 vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. Ultimately, why do we do these things? Is so that we better conform ourselves to the poor one, the chaste one, and the obedient one, and that's Jesus himself. If Jesus was married, and if Jesus was wealthy, and Jesus somewhat was sort of independent and autonomous and, as they say, did his own thing, well, there'd be no reason to live religious life. We live this life because we want to live a life more in conformity with the life of Jesus. And so poverty means, quite practically, is that we try not to amass many things. We live a very simple life. As Franciscans, especially, we try not to even have many material things. The buildings, as Franciscan Friars of the Renewal, we don't own any of our property. We don't seek to have a salary. We live on the alms of the people and by our own work in the apostolate. So if we're giving a talk somewhere, or if I'm giving a retreat, sometimes they'll ask me, "Father, how much do we owe you?" And we say that we don't charge. And so whatever people give us, that's how we live. And so our poverty is a life of which we don't have many things, but more importantly, it's a sacramental, it's a sign of a deeper poverty, the poverty of the spirit.
As the Franciscan friars of the Renewal will attest, the act of charity and the vow of poverty goes hand in hand. By doing without, a person can focus more intently on doing God's work. Don't go away, as Mysteries of the Church will continue after this.